Good morning.
Morning, how are you, Andrew?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thanks, mate.
Yes, we're super excited, and we should probably say good morning to everyone else. I can start to see people filtering in now, which is great. So I can see the guys kind of pilling through. So good stuff. Super happy about that. So welcome to the first digital growth show. Thank you for being with us. I guess we're going to be here for the next, we'll see how it flows, 25-30 minutes. We don't want to keep you guys too long. We want to keep it kind of bubbling along. So just by way of introduction, obviously, I'm Andrew. Nice to see everyone. Amit, I'll throw over to you.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Amit, and me and Andrew both work together at Nexa. Yeah, hopefully you guys will kind of enjoy this and have some really good takeaways on the back of this.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that everyone can hear the sound. So for those of you that we just had a bit of feedback that somebody couldn't hear the sound. So just if somebody else is having some issues, just please let us know. We can hear each other. So I'm hoping that everyone else can hear as well. Okay, so we're getting some feedback now. Yes, I can hear the sound. Wonderful. Yeah, I hear you loud and clear. Will, great. Sorry, I just saw someone from used to do the radio show. Good stuff. So that's good news. Everyone can hear loud and clear. So I think the idea of this show really, and we can kind of talk a bit about it at the top here, is the show is designed to be for you. The really around everyone that's watching and participating. That's what the show is really for. We decided to have this conversational style so we can bounce back and forth and really talk about real things. So what's happening in the market at the moment, what was happening 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago, and potentially what can happen now. So we want to keep it very real and very honest. But I guess we want to get a bit of a better feel for the people who are out there, right, Amit?
Yeah, it'd be good. I mean, like what Andrew said, I think what we're really trying to achieve here is not just look at what's happening now. We know that everyone's facing a lot of sort of challenges. There's a lot going on that people are having to deal with, both on kind of personal and professional levels. But I guess what we really want to do is start looking forward, right, and really kind of looking into the future. But yeah, like Andrew said, I think the show is about you guys, so it'd be really good to understand who's in the room, who's watching. So that we can adapt the content. I mean, this is supposed to be a very kind of interactive show. It's not about slide decks or anything like that. We want to have kind of real conversations and really kind of make this as sort of grounded as possible.
Yeah. So with that in mind, we just want to put up our first poll. So our first poll is going to be essentially who's logged in. So we want to understand, potentially, from a job role perspective or just kind of where you are within your organization. So are you that business owner or business leader? Are you marketing professional, sales professional, IT professional, business strategist, or perhaps other? So I think this, as Amit mentioned, will help us kind of try to understand who's in the room and potentially, adjust the conversation accordingly. We're obviously going to be talking across a wide range of subjects. So I'll just leave that up there for another couple of seconds. We've got kind of the moment, that's good. We've got kind of a bit of a split between marketing and business owners. Marketing professionals seem to be in the lead at the moment, if it was a race. So I think it looks like pretty much everyone has taken the chance to vote. So let me just end that poll. And I guess we can see the outcome there.
Yeah, great. Okay, so I think that gives us a great idea.
So here we are.
I
mean, I'm just sharing the poll here. So we've got in the room here, guys, just to give you an understanding. So yeah.
Okay. So the majority of people are either kind of business owners or leaders or marketing professionals, and I think that kind of helps us. Great. Thanks, Andrew. So But I think, you know, as we kind of look forward, I think it might make sense to kind of look at where everyone is right now as well. So we've got an idea of who's in the room. You know, we're what, 2 months really into how sort of COVID-19 has really kind of been impacting us. You know, I think it was kind of second week of March where we really started to see the impacts firsthand. And I'm conscious of, you know, talking about the UAE or the Middle East as a region. I think today we've got people tuning in from the States, Canada, Australia. So thanks for all of, yeah, and the UK as well. So, but again, I think for most of the world, it was really kind of mid-March when we really started to kind of feel firsthand what the impact was. And I know what we went through. I mean, it was very challenging because I'd say even at the beginning of March, we were still looking at this as someone else's problem, right? You know, we had meetings and we were saying, look, you know, there's a potential that this, you know, does start to impact us over here and impact our other offices in the UK and the US as well. But, you know, we felt as if the probability of that happening was pretty low, right? And it wasn't just, you know, us trying to look at data and trying to dissect it. You know, this information was coming from leaders, right? You know, from the UK, from the US. And so we didn't really see it as being, you know, too much of a problem, you know, if we're honest. But I think the speed at which this did start to impact us was, I think, the most surprising thing. And the way it accelerated, I think, was pretty scary, right? So if I go back to that sort of mid-March time when we really started to see the impact, you know, we started getting phone calls from clients who were saying, look, you know, we either have to close our business or, you know, we're seeing a massive decline in our business. We may have to, you know, put contracts on hold. I think that's when we really started to see, okay, look, this could be a huge problem. And you know, we weren't working from home at that point or anything like that, right? It was full offices.
Yeah.
I think, you know, from, you know, as, you know, essentially the CEO of a company, I think the challenges I faced at that point were, okay, what do we kind of make of this, right? If this does continue to accelerate, you know, what do we do? How do we kind of understand how we should be dealing with these emotions? And I think at that point was when I really started to kind of read more about psychology and really kind of understand different kind of business models. Because, you know, and I've, you know, been running this business for 15 years, but there's been businesses prior to that. And it was just really interesting how actually my emotions were just up and down every single day, right? It was almost like a bit of a roller coaster. One day you're thinking, right, this is the way forward. The next day something else has changed. And then you go back and think, okay, maybe that wasn't the way forward. And it was trying to kind of, I'd say, you know, collate all of these kind of feelings, right? I mean, do you remember those conversations, Andrew? I mean, it was so ever changing, right? I mean, it was just so fluid and so dynamic in terms of what was going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're very fortunate. We've come to realize that we are fortunate, you know, having 5 partners, that we have the ability to share some of those emotions, some of those fears, frustrations. You know, and actually part of the reason why we looked at launching this series was essentially to help some individuals that perhaps don't have that support network. So it was on a daily basis. There was information coming out from a global perspective. There was information coming out from a local perspective, and then also just from a government. So, you know, as Amit mentioned, I think we were one of the, as an independent organization, we were one of the first to say, okay, guys, start for work from home. And really that was a decision, but at that time it was a challenge to make decisions because obviously things were changing on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I think from my perspective, again, it was just really trying to understand, look, is what we're feeling normal, right? Is everyone else kind of going through this?
Yeah.
I think we're fairly fortunate that you know, we have quite a wide network. So we had even outside of the partners, you know, there are other people that I was speaking to, other business leaders, and trying to gauge if they were going through the same emotions, right? But, you know, and although it felt like they were, I wasn't sure if that was still right. You know, is it kind of normal to do that? And I guess what I'm getting to is I came across basically different kind of business models and different models of crisis. And I came across Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's grief cycle. And this was just very random. I wasn't even looking for anything related to, you know, personal tragedy or anything like that. But essentially, Kubler-Ross created this grief cycle based on her experience. And this is a study going back to the 1960s. And it talks about the different stages of emotions that people go through, during times of crisis. And in her case, it was with cancer patients. And so I kind of looked at this and said, okay, this is really interesting, because a lot of what she talks about in the model is what I felt I was going through. Lots of kind of ups and downs. It was, waves of emotions. But ultimately, our role as leaders is to make sure that we're not, I guess, sharing those waves of emotions to our staff and to our clients, right? We can't afford to be, up and down, and go backwards and forwards. So, although we were kind of managing this on a kind of psychological level personally, I think what we needed to do was, really kind of understand this within a framework. And I'm going to share my screen, and I promise it's not a slide deck, but I'm going to share my screen just to show you what we sort of came up with. Because we looked at Kubler-Ross's model and said, okay, this doesn't necessarily apply to the business world. But I'm not a psychologist, essentially, just a business leader. So I wanted to understand if this actually made sense. And so I spoke to a friend of mine, a guy called Mark Williams, and he's a leading HR consultant who's been in this region for a long time, but he's now in the UK as a business coach. And this is very much kind of, what he does. And I spoke to him about it, and I said, look, I'm trying to get my head around this. What are your thoughts? What is it that, do you think this applies? Is this just me? And he looked at it and said, no, he said, I've been working on a very similar study, and I think this model works really well. But he said, the original model by Kubler-Ross, maybe isn't correct. And so he said, look, I've been thinking about sort of adapting that model. And so we looked at these different stages and basically, from denial. So I think that very first stage is when we said, this is, is this going to happen to us? Right? Yeah. This is someone else's problem, essentially. And all the way through to kind of, anger, where you start to get maybe more angry, like, why is nobody helping us? This is really going to kind of impact our business.
We had a crazy good month in February. We were going to smash it in March, smash it in April.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and all of those kinds of different emotions, right? How are we going to survive? And then you get to that sort of bargaining and rationalization stage where you start to kind of come to terms with it a little bit more. But then as you're kind of, feeling a little bit more positive about it, you start to kind of despair. Is this going to work? Is this really going to make a difference? Yeah. Who do we need to speak to? What do we need to do? And then all the way through to that sort of acceptance stage. And what Mark added, which I felt was really valuable, was the action point. He said, because when people start to accept that there's, maybe only so much they can do, they can start to kind of create better actions. And I felt that was really, really interesting. So I guess, it's kind of long story short, I think what would be really useful, I guess, especially for the business leaders and some of you guys who are kind of managing teams and taking care of people or have, business responsibilities and such, at what stage of the cycle are you guys at? So Andrew, I'll keep the slide on for a second longer, but if you could pull up that poll, I think it'd be good to kind of get a gauge on where everyone's head's at right now.
Yeah, I think also here we go. So here we go. So you guys should be able to see the poll now on your screen. So I think what we found interesting is we were on another webinar earlier on last week, and they were talking about where you're at the moment in your activity, and we were quite surprised that there was people still relatively early on in denial and anger stage almost, that people were, as we've mentioned, we're a good 6 to 8 weeks down the journey, but obviously there was still people all over the map really when it came to that. So I think yeah, this is interesting. So we've got some of this coming through now. So there seems to be majority at the moment is acceptance and action, which I think is close to 70%, which is great. Despair and depressions do 11%, bargaining and rationalization at 10%, but we've still got 7% down there at denial. Everyone, yeah. It seems like we've got a pretty happy room because there's not any angry. No one's answered angry at the moment.
Yeah, this is true. Actually, I'll tell you, yeah, an interesting part of this. I spoke to Mark again a couple of days ago about this, and he said to me, he said a lot of what he's seeing with his clients is people who were perhaps at the, acceptance or action stage a couple of weeks ago have almost now gone back down that sort of reverse slide, and are now kind of second guessing the decisions they made. things haven't maybe changed in a way that they'd hoped or anticipated. And you know, and I guess that's, again, similar things that we all go through, because, you know, we can all make decisions based on the data we have, you know, the kind of gut feel that we have. I mean, all of these things are really important. But the point is, and I think this is important in terms of understanding this model, is you can kind of start interchanging between different stages.
Yeah.
And I think that's really super important for you guys to understand as well, you know, in case you are, you know, feeling really positive one day and the next day kind of less positive, and then you start to kind of second guess. I think the key to this, and I think this is something that we've done, is be prepared to, you know, change decisions. If you feel as if, you know, something was 100% correct and right a couple of days back, but may no longer apply today, be brave, right? Make those decisions. You know, don't kind of stand firm unless you know you're fully aware of the consequences of you know, perhaps not being dynamic, because this whole environment is very fluid. We've had clients who've paused contracts, come back a couple of weeks later and said, right, we're ready to go again, and 2 days later said, sorry, we're gonna have to pause again. You know, we're not ready.
Yeah.
And I think you know, and that changes.
Yeah, I think it changes. I think, Amit, we may as well pull off that slide now, mate. We don't want to kill people with PowerPoint, right? So, and then what people really want to see, Amit, is us, right? I noticed there was a comment that they were saying it's a bit fuzzy. I think that's just my beard, but yeah. So I think the thing is here, when we're, as we've mentioned at the moment, what we're seeing in the market is obviously there's outside forces that are impacting activity. So even down to when you look at Kuwait, when everything was pretty much opened up, and they'd opened up various you know, showrooms, shops, coffee shops, etc., that came back down again over the weekend. So we've got clients there that have been impacted now that have showrooms that were kind of effectively opening their showrooms. We saw similar things in Saudi. So I think what we've realized through all of this, that it's okay to you know, essentially make changes to those decisions, right? Even though they may be very firm. So for example, we've decided to keep our team still working from home. Some organizations have taken the 30% rule and kind of, you know, helped people back into the office environment, but we're still working from home. So I think that's important, right, mate? Just to kind of realize that it's okay not to be right.
Yeah, 100%. Because I mean, no one knows the answer to any of these questions, if I'm honest with you, right? You know, when is this going to end? When are things going to get better? When are we going to be able to kind of operate and function as normal? Are we ever going to be able to operate and function as normal, right? I think those are really kind of important points. And so, you know, and we're seeing big companies like Google made a decision, I think last week, where now they're going to keep all of their workforce at home until at least the end of 2020. And I kind of feel as if, look, people need stability. Uncertainty is always dangerous. And I think at that point, people start kind of, you know, perhaps making wrong decisions when they're not certain of certain facts, of specific facts. So, you know, I think what people will start to do, maybe those decisions that were made every week or every couple of weeks or maybe every month, I think those will slowly start to change to maybe the next quarter, or perhaps even like what Google have done, you know, until the end of the year. But I think that's really kind of important to recognize as well. Andrew,
yeah,
you're out there in the market, you're speaking to business owners, you're speaking to marketing folk. How are you kind of seeing the market right now? You know, what's people's kind of what's people's appetite to go and spend money to invest in, you know, in the marketing and things like that? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I like you calling them marketing folk, because it feels very Lord of the Rings. So I quite like that. As far as, yeah, what do you mean kind of right now as we sit here today, or a few weeks ago, or kind of what do you feel?
Yeah, perhaps maybe, well, what's changed? Maybe look back at, say maybe middle of March, end of March through to today. I mean, what kind of, I mean, is there any change?
You know... I would say there is a change. I think there was definitely, we spoke about this earlier on, that, you know, that's somebody else's issue, somebody else's problem to handle. So I think in the early days, things were, you know, pretty much on the straight and narrow as far as conversations. So conversations that perhaps you were having, you know, for the previous month or 2 months were still happening. There was no kind of hard stop. And then I think that what happened is, as soon as it started to really impact, and everyone started to see how it impacted not only on their work life, but perhaps their partner's work life, their friends, etc., at that point there was a kind of nervousness or slowdown as far as, okay, hold on, what's happening. But it was very interesting. So there were some people that were like, right, I've got a budget, I need to spend it, what can I do? Almost a fear that they may lose it, right? That it's already been allocated, and then other people were kind of holding back. But I'd say that was a short period. So really the kind of short period was, complete slowdown, but then there was conversations that started to happen, and the conversations were slightly different. So the conversations now are very ROI driven, right? So I have something, it may not be as much as before, but I want to get the best value from it, right?
Okay.
I want to try, and the interesting thing here is there's also other individuals that are looking at digital, for example, and digital marketing that haven't looked at that before, because there is an RO element. So I'd say that what's happened is, you've almost had that shift from not sure, some people have it because I may lose it, and now you're getting people coming through saying, well, look, whatever I do, I want to make sure that I'm getting some sort of return.
Okay.
This really isn't a time to be building a brand as far as awareness. People want sales. That makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Look, I think it'd be interesting to ask the audience as well. Yeah. So let's pull up that poll. So we've got a poll that's been created, and we just want to kind of understand if your marketing budgets have been cut. So I know we have a lot of, like I said, business owners and marketing folk, as you like that, Andrew, in the audience. So let's ask you. How has your marketing budget been impacted since COVID started spreading and sort of impacting our businesses? Okay, so let's load that up. Perfect.
Yeah, I think as that starts to load, and as people, as we can see, start to answer, I think the real interest here is what will happen as well. So this is now. So I mean, what will happen perhaps?
Sure. Yeah, I guess the impact of marketing budgets being cut right now will perhaps sort of impact people moving forward, right? Especially perhaps B2B companies. Yeah. Where the return is maybe 3 to 6 months or even 12 months down the line.
That's true. Yeah. I think that's a good point actually, because when we look at marketing efforts, some people are not looking necessarily for leads and sales now because their sales cycle is so long. How are those results looking?
Yeah, interesting, really interesting. So more than half are saying that their budgets have been cut by over 50%. Some are saying over 75%. Yep. So about half of those over 50% are saying it's over 75%. That's really interesting. Okay. Yeah, I think that gives us a really kind of good idea. I guess that's pretty consistent with what you're seeing in the market then, and what you're saying is people who are willing to spend money, those lucky ones who do have budget left over, are much more kind of return conscious. I guess they want to see some bang for their buck, I guess.
Yeah, they have to. I mean, this if they're fortunate enough. So I mean, it sounds like most people's budgets have been cut. So I think that marketing budgets weren't super relaxed anyway. They were quite tight. So I think to now squeeze it even harder, they want to make sure that they get every kind of juice, every drop out of the juice, or of course every drop out of the orange. So I think it's interesting to see how that's happened now. I think. I mean, it's probably worth taking a deeper dive in this, perhaps in some later shows, just to understand, okay, well, what are the choices? What can people potentially do? Whereas some of the avenues that they may want to focus some of that marketing budget, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, I guess, it's funny because, I can go back to perhaps the last recession, when the same sort of thing happened. And it's funny how marketing budgets always seem to be amongst the first that get cut. And then I can understand that, right? In some cases, people can't draw a straight line between what they're doing from a marketing perspective through to revenue. And for any company who doesn't really know, what marketing generates for them, marketing does make sense perhaps to cut. And I fully agree with those kind of business owners. But I do feel as if you need a plan B, right? So if you are going to cut marketing budget, just in case marketing actually was having an impact for you, what do you do next, right? Because if you don't have a plan B, Perhaps this is maybe a sure fast way of potentially losing your business, right? If suddenly you've got no inquiries, no footfall, whatever that looks like. So it'll be interesting. And I think you're right, Andrew. I think let's kind of look at this in a bit more detail. Let's perhaps help people with some plan Bs if they are in that situation. We understand. Look, we were in a very similar position where we had to look at what we were spending. But I think because of the nature of what we do, we've got not just a plan B, but a plan C, D, and E as well. So, but let's kind of let's try and help people out in that way. Those who have had budgets cut and perhaps not sure where they can just start generating leads or new customers from.
Yeah, I think what's important is you touched upon this, Amit, was the fact that there is that you may not know the impact now, right? If you stop marketing, obviously, because you're a restaurant, that makes sense, or you're a hotel. But if you're involved in selling widgets for X, Y, Z, and usually widgets for X, Y, Z take 9 months to come to fruition, you're not going to know about it, right? And it's going to be too late. So yeah.
Okay, awesome. Andrew, I think just one thing I want to talk about. I mean, we've looked at, I guess, the past or almost like where we are right now. Okay, with the crisis model. I think we've seen some of the challenges that people are going through in terms of budget constraints and things like that, in terms of really how do they kind of grow their businesses. I really want to kind of start focusing a little bit more on that, because obviously this is a growth show, and in order to help people kind of grow their businesses, I think we need to kind of start looking into the future a bit more. So, I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, I kind of where we are right now is obviously challenging for everyone. But where do you see this ending? Is there kind of light at the end of this tunnel? In your opinion, I guess based on conversations again that you're having with lots of different people, where is that light? What does it look like?
Yeah, I think first of all, that's great that you've given me such an easy question to answer, right? So let me just go below my desk here and get my crystal ball, and then start to see. Or perhaps I think I've got one of those old Magic 8 ones on my desk, the old executive toy that I can shake. But no, on a serious note, obviously, so to give everyone an idea out there, I'm on average at the moment having 6 to 8 calls a day, talking to businesses that are either looking for just some support, some help, or some real direction as far as what to do. So I think and other guys in the organisation as well. So I think we're having a good look through the looking glass, as it were, as trying to understand, not just regionally, but also from a global perspective, obviously, because of our offices, locations, we're seeing what the feeling or the sentiment is. So I'd say that if you look in very much in the B2B space, which still is able to operate, we are seeing that we have to get on with something. We have to continue to work. Things still need to be made. Production still needs to go on. And now it's almost like a transition into living with, right? As opposed to kind of sitting back and then waiting for things to happen. I think what we're seeing more of is people kind of getting up and actually moving forward, which I think, so it's positive in that sense. Again, for the people that can, right? You
haven't given me a date though yet, Andrew. What date does it get better?
Okay. You know what? Let's do something interesting. So if I put a date out there, let's do the 8th of August. There we go. So that's when things start to look a bit better. I'd say from what we've seen and conversations we've had, it is looking more likely Q3, Q4, and then Q1 into next year. As far as where we know from a balance perspective, how we've been impacted. Again, are those budgets going to be pulled back? But there are other organisations that their numbers have kind of skewed, or their whole business model has changed, due to this. So this is real. This is where I think it needs time to really understand, because some business, for example, has continued. I mean, logistics from a delivery perspective, from an e-commerce, etc.
Well, no, I think some.
What about
sectors
you?
have,
I mean, look, you
yeah,
you said
I'm
me, are you going for the 8th
sure.
of August as well, or when?
No, I'm much less optimistic, if I'm honest with you. I don't. I feel as if look, if we can live in a post-COVID world in August, or and I'm not saying totally sort of
No, I said living
extinguished,
with.
but
I don't think. Yeah, I think it's going to be not
yeah,
post for a while.
but to a point where we've got much more kind of freedom of movement, and freedom of movement without fear is the big one for me. I think that's where things will change. If that's August, brilliant. I'm not so sure, and I think it was obviously be dependent sort of country to country. From an economic standpoint, I think what this has done is fast tracked a recession, and I think it'll be a big global recession on the back of this. The US stock market is just absolutely crazy. So while they've lost, if their job numbers are up to 15% unemployment, yet the stock market is again at an all-time high. Really kind of makes no sense. So that just feels like a huge bubble that could potentially burst at any point. So look, the impact of this is, I think, going to be slightly longer. If we're into a recession, then that could maybe head into middle of next year, perhaps end of 21, maybe even into early 2022. Until we see a really kind of strong and full recovery. But I think, like what you said, it differs industry to industry. There's obviously some sectors that are doing really well now. We've seen businesses pivot who were perhaps very kind of traditional in nature, who've now really been forced to look at things like e-commerce and things like that. So I feel as if there'll be some innovation that happens during this time, because people, I think their survival instincts will really start to kick in if they haven't already. And when entrepreneurs have survival instincts, it's generally great. There's new innovation, there's new things that happen.
I think even inside larger organizations, there's been almost a few memes going around about digital transformation. It's like the 5-step plans in digital transformation. Step 1, COVID-19. And then suddenly everything kind of gets approved and everything happens through. So some of this, the sheer force of nature has really driven some plans that were already laid, but just accelerated them massively to try and battle through.
You're right. And look, I think it's also sensible to say that I think the world that we kind of come out of, I guess, if we look at potential COVID issues now, potential recession, I think the world that we move into post these two things is going to look very different, right? So I think we're gonna see a lot more. I don't know. I think just much more kind of remote working. I think as if business travel is going to be massively impacted. So I can't see people jumping on a plane for just a single meeting, for example, which I think a lot of us have done in the past.
Yeah, we've done.
Yeah, we've done frequently. So but again, because now the whole world is comfortable with Zoom, because the whole world has been forced to adopt it at the same time, right? Which is such a kind of unique moment, right? Because I feel as if this was just a UAE problem or a UK problem. The other countries that you operate may not kind of, they think, why doesn't this guy just come and see me, right? Whereas now, everyone has just been forced to adopt technology. You mentioned digital transformation, and obviously this is a part of it. The comfort levels are increasing. So we've been having Zoom calls for years, but the point is that comfort levels are now there, right? So everyone's very comfortable with getting on these, speaking. We've got a video on policy, in our company, where if you're on a Zoom call, you have your video on. But I'm seeing, I guess if we look at the last 2 months, the big change I'm seeing now is even kind of sales or client meetings that we're having, more videos are on than there were previously. So, I think there's that whole sort of comfort level there. People are connecting remotely. And so it's going to be a different world. And I think within that different world, people are going to have to adapt to things like this. So, I think, there's going to be a whole load of challenges. There's going to be a whole load of jobs being lost, a whole load of lives that are going to be impacted between now and that point. But hopefully, there'll be some positive. And if you look at, global economies over the last 50 years, you know, post-recession has always been a recovery and then some more, right?
Yeah,
and,
yeah. There's definitely opportunities, yeah, that are kind of, and that's tough sometimes to think about that, because obviously you may be in a very difficult situation personally or know people who are. But yeah, there's definitely, I think also the way that we're so connected as a society now, because if we look back to 2008, 2009, the online space looks very different. The demand economy, you know, the fact that you can work remotely very comfortably. They don't have to necessarily be in country to even understand that country because of data that presents itself online. So I think that is a big game changer as well, as far as how this recovery happens, and also possibly the speed of it as well, because it is easier to you know, activate certain tools or penetrate different markets, or exactly pivot your whole business, you know, into a different direction.
Yeah, no, I agree. Look, Andrew, I think it's a good place to stop there. Thank you very much, guys, for all of your input today. Thanks for participating in the polls. The idea of those polls is really that it will give us, you know, perhaps, you know, topics that we need to go into a little bit more detail in.
Exactly.
So really, it's the information that you give us that allows us to give you more information back and perhaps more help and support. So, so thanks again for participating. Thanks for tuning in. Andrew, some final words of wisdom?
Words of wisdom, just because I've got a beard, eh? No, yeah, I think we just need to remain positive but not delusional. So I think that's really the kind of message here, that I think just there is positive activity happening out there. I am seeing it every day. New businesses being closed, as far as sales coming in. I don't mean closing business. So I think that positive energy, we need to kind of, you know, hold on to that and then carry forward. But looking forward to talking about, you know, this and other topics over the next few weeks, months, etc. And now I've got a calendar date that I need to look out for as well. So yeah, thank you everyone for staying tuned today.
Awesome. So guys, this is a weekly, it's a weekly show, and so we'll be sending out the details of the next show very shortly. So yeah, please try and tune in. If not, we'll be able to send you a copy of a show afterwards. So that's it. Looking forward to kind of seeing you all next week. All right, take care.
Bye. See ya.